Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackguard. And you're watching episode 210 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. What are we talking about today, Victoria?
No Bigfoot about it. And it's the OAC episodes for and Hurricane Perkins. So Hurricane Perkins and then the Revenge of Bigfoot, which are the OAC episodes of May and April? No, March and April. April and June.
Those are not consecutive months.
I failed this part of grade 1.
May and June.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I didn't know which one you were nodding to also on top of that.
well, I was saying no to the pair.
Yeah, but you nodded for a second, so like one of the things
Well,
I
because
said
you
at
said
one point
May
was right.
1st, and then you went back a month instead of forward a month. So, episode 914, Hurricane Perkins, written by Marshall Younger. What happens, Victoria?
So in this one, the Perkinses are invited to a Christian group in Connellsville, which has a bunch of people who have relatives who are in the army or serving in some way. And it's basically like a weekly get-together where they can just all like bond and stuff and hang out. And the Perkins are a little like reticent at first. I think I used that word correctly.
Yeah.
And then Wyatt sees there's a trampoline and he goes off and he has fun with this boy who's part of this family. And
A boy from a family. Yes.
boy from a family. And Wyatt starts spouting his Wyatt facts as he does. And
He
the
starts
boys
Glenn
lose all of
Adamsing it.
And some of the facts are like that milk that you buy in a store comes from rats and your liver is going to grow fur or something like that if you drink it.
And one of the other kids had type B leprosy.
Yeah. He had like face paint on his face that got wet from the sprinklers. Poor kid. And then there is Bridget, who becomes best friends with like this 6-year-old, and it's the cutest thing ever. It reminded me of like Arya Curzon in Tornado. It was so cute. And this little girl is just like, I have 14 friends or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Bridget's like, I don't have any friends. And she's like, you're my friend now. We're best friends. And Bridget says like, oh, I don't have friends usually because we move and then I lose all my friends. And then the little girl's like, I'm going to lose all my friends. And then she gets
Little
real
girl's
sad.
like, I'll never love again.
Yeah, pretty much. And it started off so wholesome, too. And then, what's the mom's name?
Carla.
Right, Carla. So she starts talking to the mom of, or like the mom of one of the families there, the wife of a guy who's going to go into the army in some way. And he hasn't gone yet. But Carla is referencing back to a past Perkins episode where there was like a bombing or something like that, and they hadn't heard from her husband in several days, and they were really worried that something happened to him.
It was the one where Bridget like went off the deep end.
Yeah. And so she starts talking about that to this lady, and then the lady's like, oh my gosh, my husband is gonna die. And then scene transition, and the Perkins are like, we had a great night. And it's like, oh no. And so then
I mean, to be fair, the scene ends and they were all like, we had a great time. Everyone thought that went well. And then the next week.
And then they go back, and then Carla's immediately confronted by like the husband of that lady, who's also the dad of the little girl and the little boy, and it's like, oh no.
Small
and
world.
he's just like, what is wrong with you people? What did you do to my family?
You have psychologically destroyed every member of my family individually.
And so then the Perkins almost leave, but then they decide to stay and just, like, show that they have issues, basically, and apologize, and that their experiences aren't necessarily universal, and lots of the stuff they said was opinion-based, and especially Wyatt, and then just, like, be good friends to them. And then they all get, like, prayed for and stuff, and then the episode ends. It's
but
a nice
I think
episode.
the key important thing about the end is that they were like, we're going to fix this. And they go and try
Yeah.
and fix it, and they didn't fix it. They didn't need to. The problem had already been fixed for them in all those cases by, like,
the nice lady who puts on
counseling and
meetings in
help
the
and
first
stuff
place.
like that. Despite the best efforts of
Yeah.
the Perkins. I remember when we talked about our predictions for this episode, and we were like, it's either going to be like one particular member of the family and they're just going through it real bad, traumatically, or in general, or it'll be like the family as a collective in some kind of hectic, like, Sunday morning scramble kind of way. So we kind of hit on both the ideas. It's like, oh, it's the family as a collective.
It's just the Perkins being a hot mess. It was a good episode. I really liked it.
Yeah.
I liked that it was, like, all of them that messed up, and when they drove all the way to Connellsville, and then they immediately had to turn back and start driving back the night they were like, we've ruined everything. And Bridget's just like, well, new record.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad you can turn this into a moment of levity, Bridget. I guess that's just a coping mechanism at this point, though. I felt bad for Bridget. The scenes with her and that little girl were so wholesome. I never thought that Bridget could be, like, so sweet and caring for a little kid.
That's the power of kids, Victoria.
It was so cute. Every single scene with those two was so adorable.
Yeah, I really liked it. And like you said, I expect it from Wyatt. Because he's him. I expect it from Bridget, but I didn't think that Carlo would have that kind of, like, quick negative impact on someone. So I really
I also think, like, it was understandable with all three of them. It didn't seem out of character.
Well, no,
anything like that.
I really liked seeing them all having to deal in different ways with, like, understanding the ways that they can negatively
this mess.
Negatively impact people, and then have to try and, like, fix what they've done. Was good. And I liked that like I said, it wasn't just like, oh, we need to fix this, we went and we apologize and explain stuff and then things are good. But rather it was like, oh, it wasn't about your efforts to try and fix things. Like, you know, they were all surprised in their own right to learn, like, oh, I didn't realize, like, you already otherwise were able to, like, get a handle on this stuff because you were talking to what's-her-face who runs the place, and then Carla has this moment where they pray together and stuff, and it was kind of this moment for the family as a unit, like, moving them forward in their collective arc as a family.
I'd say this is a good comfort episode, honestly. It's just very wholesome.
Do you think, so they mentioned that the dad, Ron, that he is stationed in Afghanistan currently. Do you think that is a reference to Al Jansen, the executive producer of the dark years of Adventures in Odyssey?
Yes, I do. That's why it's a bad place.
That's what I'm figuring. I mean, it's Afghanistan, and he was Al Jansen.
That's definitely what they're referring to.
I mean, previously they would use Rakistan, so...
I mean, I don't think they're actually referring to the guy, but it's funny to think they are. I
don't think it is out of the question that it could be a reference. I mean, I don't think it's supposed to be a dig on him, but it seems entirely possible to me.
How would that not be a dig?
It is a tribute.
That is such a dig. Whit would go after his, like, we lose his voice actor and just spend, like, 5 whole albums there, and we have to go track him down.
Very good.
Thank you.
For the web doc, Bob goes to a trampoline park. Some dude talks about how to quickly discern fake info and urban myths on the internet, which is a good thing to tell small children watching this. For some reason, until this episode, I never thought that Wyatt was, like, reading random like fake stuff online and believing it. I was just assumed he was knowingly making facts up from whole cloth himself.
Oh, I usually figured he was just reading like literally anything and assuming it was.
No, I always thought he was making them up and knew he was lying, not that he actually believed the stuff he was saying.
No, I never thought he was knowingly lying, just very ignorant about what he was talking about. It's funny you mentioned that, like the importance of just like discerning fact from fiction online with kids, because that's what we were talking about in my class yesterday online, was how important like digital citizenship and digital online literacy is for kids, especially when they're younger, and also for adults, because
when they're young and when they're old.
My prof was just like, it's good for kids and it's good for adults. It is good for any age, especially today. So, this one, did this one have? I know one of these was definitely
they also talked about Cadence International, and they talked to kids about like, how do you make friends?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was so funny because when we recorded the other one the other day, and I said, "Is this one a charity?" and you're like, "No, they make it very abundantly clear when it's a charity." And within the first like 30 seconds of this one, it was like, "I work for this charity." Name drop, and I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, never mind." So I don't need to ask, and I already preemptively know in that case that the next one does not have a charity that is linked to it.
Yes, we're not funding the Bigfoot, the North American Bigfoot Institute with the next episode.
Yeah, so I honestly don't have much to say for this one. I thought it was really, really wholesome, especially like the endings with the Perkins being like prayed for and comforted by all the people there.
Yeah, I really like I said, Carla's part of this story, especially because it's like we all see this coming from Bridget, because she has a tendency to be pessimistic, especially when she's paired with someone who's extremely young and naive. And I could see it coming from Wyatt also. Also, when he's paired with the family, both the kids they were talking to were like the most like doe-eyed, naive, innocent children in the world.
They're little babies.
But I wouldn't expect it from Carla, and it's like, I mean, yeah, she is someone who generally is very stressed out, but for very good reason, due to her family situation, due to the children that she's raising, and everything else going on with her. I certainly don't fault her for it.
There's like this song from the Falsettos musical called "I'm Breaking Down," and it's basically like the mom making food while she's like having an emotional breakdown, and the actress just like pops off and is completely losing her mind on stage, and she really reminds me of a combination of like Carla and Grady's mom.
So yeah, I really liked from Carla's perspective, because as she was explaining all this stuff, I was thinking like, oh yeah, what I was thinking was, it must be so nice for her to be able to talk to someone who can like, you know, understand where she's coming from, share these sentiments. I absolutely wasn't expecting like someone to have this like horrific reaction to it.
Oh yeah, she was like crying and waking up in the middle of the night and having nightmares. I felt so bad for her.
So I think in the case of Bridget and Wyatt, like we can clearly see the flaws where we're like, oh yeah, I would expect like they could accidentally mess someone up without realizing it. But Carla, we're not expecting it from. So when we see that did happen, that's when you have, you know, that good moment where you see an episode, you're like, oh, I didn't think about the fact that like that could happen. Like, when she was doing it, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a bad thing. But it did happen, and it makes sense, which is important because then it makes you realize, like, oh, I could accidentally do this without realizing it until after the fact, which is always an important moment, right? That moment of, like, empathizing and self-realization in a character, because if it's like, if you're showing someone who's, like, has this really glaring flaw that leads to the problem, you can think, like, well, I'm not like them. I don't have to worry about this.
I'm built different.
Exactly. But I think the fact that Carla fell into this as well in the way that she did, in a way that I didn't see coming, was a really good, like, oh yeah, like even in ways that you don't realize or wouldn't suspect even in the moment when it's happening, like this could happen to you. And then of course, like I said, I like the fact that they were like, okay, we're going to do better. We're going to make up for it. But even when they went to try and do that, they were like, oh, these guys, they already talked to like the counselor and like got help about it and stuff, and that they ended up. Well, I mean, more in Carla's case, I wouldn't say. Well, in Bridget's case too, just not Wyatt's. It was like, oh, you ended up helping me in the end because you got more fixed than I did by the time I tried to fix you, and then you ended up fixing me a little bit.
Me at Carla in this episode, and also me at Buddy in the next episode. I'm basically like one of the Robinsons from Meet the Robinsons, and I'm like, yay, you failed! And then I do like the keep moving forward sequence, like Carla being part of the problem too in this episode, which this is the first time in an episode she's really like...
That's true.
Failed. Like, she does arguably have like the not understanding what Bridget needs earlier on, and also like not being there in the way Bridget needed, but she didn't like know about that.
Yeah.
This is more directly like she was at fault. And then we'll get to this later, but like Buddy just being a jerk in the next episode was so refreshing for me. I love it when characters who are just like nice or just like generally chill for like every single thing they're in, and then it's just like, and then they get one episode where they're mean, and I'm like, yeah, good for you, you've earned this, you get to be me, and I'm proud of you. He was like, I'm gonna trick Jay and make Jay think he's lost in the woods and I'm gonna abandon him, and I was like, you know what, I love Jay, pop off, buddy. Pop off, king, you're doing so good, I got your crown. Like, oh, I loved it.
I'm going to give this episode 3.56. 3.6.
That's a lot lower than I thought it would be. What is the reason for your deductions? Because I'm going to give it a 5. I really liked it.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was really good. I can't think of anything I didn't like.
Yeah, I guess
about
I could
the
raise it.
episode.
Well, I did like it. I didn't think it was like exceptional.
I mean,
That was just like a good, that's over 70%. It's a B.
I don't think it was like the best thing ever.
I guess it's at the
anything
cusp,
like that, but
the
like
cusp of a C plus to a
I enjoyed
B
it a
minus.
lot. I think it was really good for all the characters where they are in their arcs right now. I
Yeah,
thought there were a lot
I'll
of
give it a
really
4.
wholesome, pleasant scenes, and I liked all the new characters that were introduced. I didn't think that I would like this episode as much as I did, and I didn't think that I would like the lady who was like running the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, she was great. I really liked her. I hope that this like group appears in another episode. It probably won't, but like, I hope these characters come back. I like them.
I'll change my score to a 4.
Yay!
I think
Coercion, peer pressure.
Yeah. Anything else to say about this episode?
Not really. I just
Oh.
thought it was generally pretty neat.
All right, then. Let's move on to The Revenge of Bigfoot. All right, now we're going to talk about episode 915, Revenge of Bigfoot, written by Abigail Geiger. Also, at the beginning of the episode, we forgot to say that we're talking about album 72 predictions, because what happened the other night, Victoria?
It reminded me of when Kingdom Hearts trailers have dropped accidentally, because they were marked as unprivate by mistake. I really hope no one at Focus got in trouble.
Anyways, what
Someone
happened,
probably
Victoria?
did. Album 72 went up fully. So, just like the entire thing on the OAC.
So,
for a couple hours, and then it was taken down. I didn't get the chance to... I did see the titles, but I basically forgot.
Yeah, so we have the titles now, so we can do the predictions. I assume some people have listened to the whole thing already. I don't know how long it was up. It was until the next morning that I saw messages.
It was definitely up for a couple hours from what I saw.
So did you just happen to check and see it?
I opened up the OAC app, I think at like around 1:30 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, because I was going to say your
message about to go to bed.
That I got was at like 1 a.m. or something like that, which is why I didn't see it till the next morning.
So, yeah, I was actually a little worried I was going to wake you up when I sent you that, but I was just like, I have to message Devin this or I'm going to forget completely. And I wanted you to know like as soon as possible too. So the entire album was up live on the OAC, but I couldn't click on it because we hadn't done our dumb predictions yet. So I couldn't listen to anything. But
Which is funny because you probably only would have had time anyways to listen to the first 2 episodes, which are still on the OAC.
Yeah, probably. So it went up. I noticed it up around 1:30 a.m.-ish a couple nights ago. And by the time I checked, once I woke up the next morning, it was down. So something happened.
Anyway, so we'll be talking about the predictions, but right now we're talking about Bigfoot. What happens? Skateboard, straw hat.
We add another goof to the goof file, except for it's a real life goof and not a written one. So in this episode, Buddy and Jay are out with like their scout troop and a bunch of other kids.
But they can't say the name anymore because they're not.
Don't care about. Like Captain Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just funny how it's like, I assume they probably intentionally avoid mentioning the name of Trail Life now that it's not the episode where they are the associated charity.
So I thought you were talking about Captain Absolutely's copyright. I thought I had my silencer on.
And it's also not Captain Absolutely. They made Captain Absolutely after...
Yeah, Power Boy is the one that's copywritten, which is why I was confused by what you were just saying.
Also, this was our prediction, was that it would be a Buddy Jay Trail Life episode.
Oh, okay. Jay's canonically an incel, but we kind of already knew that in this episode.
Kind of?
We already knew that, but it's even more confirmed in this episode. I'm so glad that when Buddy had the fantasy about all the reporters like going crazy for Jay, Zoe was not there. That was like my one fear. So Zoe's not in this episode, so that's a plus. She is mentioned though.
Well, it's Trail Life, so...
Yeah, but
hey, is
it's
this
still about
our second episode that has no women in
it? It's still about like Jay and stuff.
There's probably, sadly, there's probably another episode out there, at least one other one that doesn't have any women in it.
So there's probably a lot of episodes.
Yeah, sadly, yes.
So Jay and Buddy are going through the woods and they see like a nest or something like that. And then Buddy starts talking about Bigfoot. Jay starts making fun of him for believing that Bigfoot variants, like more like Bigfoot is like the species, and then there's a bunch of like subspecies, and like Buddy knows about them because him and his dad have done research because they think it's interesting. And then Jay starts making fun of them. And Jay and Buddy go back to the camp area. And then they start talking about that with like everyone there, including Eugene and Buddy's dad. And Buddy's dad starts talking about like this article he just read. And Eugene says it was written by one of his coworkers at Campbell College.
No, it is not one of his coworkers. It is a famous guy from New York.
Okay. A guy who was
funded.
An
important point that I had to go back and make sure that I remembered correctly, because later on I was like, wait a minute, did I remember that right?
He got like his funding from Campbell College then.
No.
Or I thought he was like connected
no association with Campbell County Community College.
Oh, okay. He just knew about connections. He's basically like, I hope he comes back in a future episode. He probably won't, but I want him to, because I want Eugene to just have a nemesis now, because I think that would be funny. Just a research nemesis, because we don't have Brandon anymore, so we need someone else. Buddy's dad starts talking about this article he read about Bigfoot, and Eugene's like, oh yeah, I read that article, and it's not true. Like, it's a bunch of made up, falsified research. Don't trust it. And then
Eugene was a little more gentle in the moment.
Yeah,
with it.
No, he was a lot nicer about it than that. But that's basically the main point of what he was getting across. And then Eugene says, like, there's a lot of other articles that are disproving this one article. If you want me to share them with you. And Buddy's dad
He
says,
fails to mention at this point that he is the author.
He is the author. He's like, buy my article, my work.
There was some very buried leads in here that when it came out later were so confusing that I just thought that I really, like, misinterpreted earlier stuff. And it was like, oh no, it was just Eugene was withholding a lot of information and there was a lot of weird coincidences.
So then everyone goes to bed and Buddy and Jay just brought a new camera that's like really expensive and kind of like a reportery camera because he wants to kind of like show it off to Zoe and get her attention and stuff. And so then Buddy's just like, hey, that nest we found with like a blue heeler, whatever the heck it was.
A grasswalker.
Yeah, that's it. A blue heeler is either a dog or a bird. It's something. So it's just like, hey, that thing is rare and exotic. If you get pictures, I'm sure you'll be like a celebrity. And then there's like a fantasy where Jay is a celebrity.
I like how you say that Buddy has to tell Jay that getting a picture of any kind of Bigfoot would be rare.
And then
no, don't worry, Jay. This is the rare type of Sasquatch.
There's like this fantasy where, again, I want to bring up the fact that there's this weird that was mentioned once and then never really brought up again, love triangle that I haven't forgotten about, Focus, that has Zoe, Buddy, and Jay in it. And so then there's this fantasy that we're given for a second where Jay is like a celebrity and he's being interviewed by all these reporters and they're going crazy about how great he is. And then Buddy tries to comment at one point and then he's immediately silenced. And then I thought this was Jay's fantasy. And Jay also brings up Elvis and stuff in the fantasy. Like, he always knew Elvis was real. And I was just like, yes, Elvis mentioned.
He does talk about how lately he's been getting more into, like, what was it? Like, fashion and cosmetics and Elvis or something like that.
Yeah.
I know it's like lately.
Good.
Getting into.
Maybe he's just more open about the fact now. So then this like glamour fantasy of Jay is revealed to be Buddy fantasizing about Jay being really famous and successful and Buddy being left in the dirt. And I was like, what am I supposed to take away from this?
I feel like it was probably more one of those things where it's like someone's daydreaming and then like someone else's daydream like butts into theirs. You know what I mean?
No,
in a cartoonish fashion.
I took it as Buddy's fantasizing about Jay, and I was like, all right, we'll unpack this later, I guess.
But we don't have time to unpack
we don't
all
have
of that.
time for that. I haven't forgot about the fact that they're in a love triangle, but now I'm like, okay, which way is this triangle?
A triangle
going,
has three sides, Victoria.
Oh, this triangle.
People always describe a love triangle when all they mean is a line with a corner in it. It's not a triangle unless all three sides are connected to each other.
Buddy has two hands.
Exactly.
So
look,
then
Barrett and Priscilla are gone. So
Barrett and Priscilla are gone. So like we don't have that.
Jay has moved on
anymore.
We have to as well, sadly, but that's like
Jay's like, well, I need to find another couple to imprint myself on or something like that.
Imprint myself into.
Yeah.
Like someone jumping off a cliff and smashing into the mud.
It's like that meme where it's the couple and their wedding photo and then the guy just like falling in the background into the water. Mm-hmm. You know what picture I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah. So, so they go and find the nest, and then there's like this feral whatever that starts chasing them, and then it comes out that Buddy was just screwing with Jay and was going to abandon him at the nest because he didn't think Jay would be able to find his way back very well, and just leave him to die in the woods, basically, because he mocked both him and his dad. And I was just like, best buddy episode in the whole series.
Well, wait a minute. Did you say that was the reason?
He was mad at Jay. He said the reason was because he was mad, and Jay made fun of like him and his dad, and it like pissed him off basically.
But he said also,
so he was like, "I'm gonna ditch you in the woods in the middle of the night."
He said that was the reason why he withheld the fact that he knew it was a fake nest, right?
Yeah.
But
so,
Jay
like,
didn't make fun of him until after he first pointed out the nest and said it was Bigfoot.
Maybe he was playing the long con. We don't know. Maybe Buddy was also with.
He didn't bring up Bigfoot till they saw the nest, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Buddy's like, I'm gonna make a plan.
I mean, it's possible he saw it, and then Jay started making fun of him, and then as he was examining it, he realized, wait a minute, this can't be real.
I only listened to it once. There were a lot of reveals in this episode. It
was very Scooby Doo, which is funny.
Very Scooby Doo.
Which is funny. We'll get to that later.
So, Eugene and Buddy's dad find them as they're running through the forest, and they're like, "We're being chased!" And then I thought this would be the bit where, like, Eugene or Buddy's dad or someone's just like, "We were pretending to be the big," and then there's just like this snarling thing still coming from.
And I don't know who this could possibly be. So is it going to be one of those things where it's like we got away? And we never will find out what actually happened.
I was like, is it like some other campers or something? But that wouldn't make sense because these were basically the only talking characters in the episode, and they're all running for their lives.
You know, it's
and I was starting to wonder if it was like a real animal or something like that.
It's like the end of Connie Goes to Camp Part 1, where the goat man noise continues to the point at the commercial break where you can hear that it's adult men making the sound that was supposed to be made by two young girls. Yeah.
The goat man used to actually kind of freak me out.
And then the girls were like, we got you. I was like, you were two, like, early 40s gentlemen a minute before the commercial break.
And your point?
How did you do that with your mouth?
So, then Eugene unmasks the Bigfoot. And he was like, it was old man fake research guy the whole time.
Old man, esteemed primatologist from New York, something person.
Mr. New York person was just like, and I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for Armitage shanks. And I was just like,
I forgot about that part. I forgot about that line.
And from that point on in the entire episode, I was still reeling until Chris did the wrap-ups and the episode was done. Because everything was still going, it was still happening, and I was like just sitting there continuously dying to Repliku and Chain of Memories, just like in shock, because I was just like, I'm sorry, we're talking about Armitage now?
We're accusing Eugene of nepotism, which is not entirely invalid because that was the reason he got on the RWS explicitly.
Yeah, I was just sitting there and I was like, well, you're not wrong, but also he did kind of work for it too. It's, oh man, I was caught so off guard. The last thing I expected in this weird Scooby Doo Boy Scouts episode goat man thing.
How much
was an Armitage Shanks mentioned? Like, he didn't get mentioned by name, but they were talking about
he was
him,
like, the college only puts up with you because of your family connections. And I was like, are they talking about Armitage? Are they talking about Leonard Meltzner? No, they're talking about Armitage.
They had to have been talking about Armitage. So, like, that
for
was
a second, my mind went to, like, Meltzner's, and I was like, oh, no, he's talking about the Shanks.
Like, I want this guy to come back in a future episode. He got, like, fired, he got, like, all his funding pulled and stuff for his research, but, like...
Embezzling research funds for Bigfoot hoaxes.
That's such a Scooby Doo thing, though.
So,
it's
Victoria.
Like, capitalist man Jones.
So,
it was you.
When I went to look at the web content for this episode after listening to it, I couldn't open the page under the normal OAC section for this one and the next episode. They both said, like, episode not found. But I went and checked right before we recorded. I was able to watch the video in advance because you can get to that from the normal album page, but I couldn't look at the web content until right before we recorded. I was like, okay, it's back. I can skim through it. The only thing I picked up of note, Victoria, and it's very funny because we keep mentioning Scooby Doo and how similar this episode is, that the new character in this episode, our dear esteemed primatologist. Fun fact, The Revenge of Bigfoot marks the Adventures in Odyssey debut of a voiceover legend, and when we say legend, we don't mean a mythical creature like Bigfoot. Actor Frank Welker has appeared in hundreds of films and TV shows. He has played Fred Jones in Scooby Doo cartoons since 1969, and more recently, the voice of Scooby as well. Other characters on his lengthy resume include Garfield, Hefty Smurf, Slimer, Jabberjaw, several Muppet Babies, including Kermit, various Transformers such as Megatron, specializes in animal and creature voices, and may have also heard him as Curious George, Bubble Puppy, or Abu from Aladdin.
Heck yeah.
So
I figured you were getting to like, this is a guest voice actor.
We literally had Fred from Scooby Doo, and also
you either die the hero or you live long enough to become the villain. You said you would join.
Also the voice of
Scooby
Doo himself.
That's awesome.
Was playing the old white man shakes fist at Cloud in Bigfoot costume in this episode.
I feel like the episode should get extra points for that, honestly. That's
and
really
I didn't
cute.
even, because I saw that and I was like, oh, that's a cool big voice actor they got, because I saw that and I screenshotted that quote at the last second before the episode. It wasn't until we started talking about how much like Scooby Doo it was that my brain even made the connection, and I was like, I can't wait to reveal this to Victoria. Frank Welker.
Frank Welker, okay.
Welker.
I don't think he's the original Garfield voice, because I know there was like that thing where like Bill Murray played Garfield in the live action one, and he was like the live action Ghostbusters dude. Yes. And then the guy who usually played
the original normal Ghostbusters dude.
And then the guy who usually played Garfield in the Garfield animated shows was cast as Bill Murray's character in the Ghostbusters TV show. Like
I did not know that.
Show.
I was wondering why you were like naming one
so, like,
other role that Bill Murray has played. I thought that was
swapped characters. So like people point that out. Dan Castellan, no, that's Homer Simpson and also Genie in Kingdom Hearts. I'm gonna look up this guy's name.
Yeah, I assume he was the original Fred, because they said 1969, which sounds about right for the start of Scooby Doo.
Lorenzo Music is what his name is.
Yes.
Does that sound familiar?
That's a name I've heard on Bim before.
Because like they mentioned it on the Bim Bam once. I didn't learn this from a Bim Bam, but I think Griffin or Justin did mention it in one episode.
Probably. I don't remember.
Because when they did, I was like, oh yeah, I already knew about that.
Okay. So we were right about our predictions, largely. And it's funny because when they saw, like, I was actually starting to wonder at a point if this was going to be connected to the film, like The Cave of Bigfoot or whatever it's called.
I was hoping. I did mention Rodney in our predictions for this.
Yeah. Because, like, well, we both talked about, you mentioned Rodney at the end of the last episode. Mm-hmm. Because they were like, they found a Bigfoot-looking nest, whatever that means, in the woods. I was like, well, what else could that be besides like a
is there?
What else could that be besides like a leftover movie prop, just like some plaster bones in a cave and stuff? And I'm sure Buddy's seen that film because he lives in Odyssey. And I personally, okay, the episode was weird and unexpected. It's weird how Eugene is apparently writing anti-Bigfoot takedown papers.
And he does monologues about marshmallows.
That's less unexpected.
Is that a real thing? Have you heard of that?
What about marshmallows?
The thing Eugene was talking about where they started off as like health.
Yeah, I think there's a Sawbones episode about it.
Huh. What are marshmallows made out of? Is it like fat or something?
I think it's like probably some gelatin there, but I think the idea is the core ingredient is like there's an actual like marsh plant that like gives the key flavoring ingredient that was like the original thing that they used to make like a gummy substance that would eventually become marshmallows.
Yeah, but marshmallows like that we have today probably aren't like that.
Made from the plant? Probably not. But the point is, like, that is the original source of, like, the, the medicinal, like, plant extract ingredient from, ancient medicine and stuff.
That's kind of cool. That was probably a way shorter explanation than the ones the kids got.
Like I said, I think there's a Sawbones episode about it. Probably. I don't know.
Most likely.
Yeah, Eugene is apparently, because he focused his lifelong studies on computer science, and then he's been primarily a chemistry prof since then for some reason. But apparently
he wears different hats.
But apparently he's also writing like Bigfoot refutation papers, and is personally, by which I mean very weirdly personally, known to an extremely famous primatologist who lives halfway across the country from here.
Maybe he's just fed up with fake, like, research
and
hoax stuff.
Like, literally,
which I can't blame him.
After the way they talked to each other, it sounded so, like, personal, the way that they talked about it, that I had to...
The funny thing is, Eugene was just like, oh yeah, this person's wrong. Some people might have the wrong idea. I'll just write this thing. And then this guy was just like, I have now made it my life goal to ruin yours. And then he like did all this research.
How much research would he need to know about Armitage Shanks?
Armitage, I'm assuming he must have like looked up like
the Novacom files and stuff. I guess all of the legal like.
He pulled like a Wellington and he dressed up like Eugene.
Yeah.
And then pulled all his he dressed up like Katrina, I guess in this case, and then pulled all of his files to find out everything about him. I bet he like tried to talk to Buck at one point, and Buck like maced him or something like that.
Well, here's the thing, Victoria. We learned it like we said before, we know that it was because of Armitage that Eugene got on the RWS, right? And the place that we know that from specifically is during Tom's trial. We hear that flashback, that recounting of that Andromeda board meeting, correct?
Yes.
And the reason that we hear that is because it is being presented as evidence in court, which means that it is all public documentation in legal records that has Armitage talking about like preferential treatment given to Eugene. So technically, as long as there's public access to the court records from what should have been an extremely like famous trial after the fact, because I love the way that they do that trial where they're like, we're defending Tom, and then they just kind of drop their like, and we just use that as a cover to like go after Novacom, even though we're the ones on trial, in a very like turnaround point where they have to set everything up, and the prosecution keeps on being like, what does this have to do with Tom Riley? And they're like, we're getting there. Anyways,
like, objection, Your Honor, irrelevant to the case.
They're like, no, look, as continuing from page 837 of our submitted evidence here.
I found this channel, and it's this lawyer reacting to like it's like he's reacting to basically any show or movie or game that has like law and stuff in it. And I've learned so much more about law within these past couple of weeks because of it. And it actually was helpful with some of my classes this week, because I had to do a bunch of readings on like ethics and laws and stuff. And I was just like, oh, I already know a ton about this because of these YouTube videos I've been watching.
Victoria's finally learned ethics.
I have to do an ethics course for my master's. I like technically don't have to do it because I'm graduating before the.
But if you don't do it, then when you get your certificate,
I'm doing it anyway.
They will write unethical in a big ink stamp, a big rubber stamp on your diploma.
Like, we are gonna make let you pass, but we're gonna ensure no one ever hires you.
We're gonna make the most unethical librarian.
I'm gonna make a librarian that is so unethical.
Parks and Recreation and Welcome to Night Vale be like,
oh man, I'm never gonna get hired anywhere now. It's your fault.
It's all my fault. I was saying, yeah, so I feel like it is plausible that if those legal proceedings were public and the case after what happened at the end and all the Novacom stuff, like all the fallout from that, I'm sure that people go through it, he would have found out from that explicitly that Eugene had a little bit of nepotism involved in the process. So yeah, after all that stuff happened, I had to go rewind to the middle of the episode to make sure that I didn't misremember and that he wasn't actually from Campbell County Community College. And nope,
I thought he was.
He is from New York, which is weird. And he was because they were like, "What are you doing?
Whatever.
What are you doing here?" And Eugene was like, "I guess he came here specifically to like spite me so that he could create a Bigfoot hoax." Specifically in the place where I lived so that it would like make me look worse when he wrote about it.
See, the funny thing to me in this episode is how much this guy cares.
As soon as he saw his face, Eugene knew who he was. You don't usually put like a picture of the author on your research papers. Like just the fact that Eugene recognized him.
I bet that guy was sending Eugene stuff, like
he was sending him angry
Snapchats,
and that's why Eugene knew his face.
Just sending him an email every day, and it's just him frowning, and Eugene is like, "Who is this guy?"
I wasn't really surprised at the start that Buddy was like, "Oh yeah, I know all about Bigfoots and big feet and their nest types, their behavioral differences between different subspecies." I was like, "Yeah, that's on, that's."
Tracks.
That's par for the course for Buddy. Even though that smacks a little bit more of Wyatt than Buddy. But I did not expect his dad to be like, "Oh yeah, I love researching this, and we've traveled all over the country on Bigfoot expedition tours."
It's kind of more of just like a fun excuse for traveling.
He did clarify. It's like, oh yeah, it's like it's a kind of weird casual hobby that we use for father-son bonding, and we're not like obsessive believer red string Pepe Sylvia kind of thing for us. It's just kind of like an interesting, quirky character trait that we just do as like a casual, fun thing.
And I think that's cute. I like that.
I did too. I was like, it is not a character trait that I would ever like think of when making a character. Like he
loves his family, is a Christian, bonds over Bigfoot.
He is like a softcore Bigfoot believer and like just casually like does research about it. I do like though.
And I'm a hardcore Mothman loving machine.
I liked how he was like, because Eugene's like, "You actually believe in Bigfoot?" And he was like, "No, I mean, it's just like, it's just a casual thing that like we do for fun.
I'm
it's
just
not
a casual cryptid enjoyer."
It's extremely like low key, just thing that we do as a family bonding thing. It doesn't really mean anything to us.
Eugene's like, "Oh, you like cryptids? Name 5.
He's like, "No, we're super low key and stuff like that." But yeah, and they're like, "Wow, that's so nerdy and fake." He's like, "Oh, well, actually, there are these papers written by this guy that I can send you some links. I'm normal about it, whatever."
And Eugene's just like, "Yeah, I can send you links also about the fact that you're wrong."
I liked how it felt like he was very much trying to brush it off like a little bit, socially like distance himself from it.
He's just like zipping up his jacket real quick, and it says like "I love Bigfoot" in big letters.
But then as soon as Eugene starts like coming for him a little bit, he suddenly has that like little bit of like defensiveness, like, "I will defend."
I think it was defensive in a way, like, I don't take this really seriously, but also like I don't like the fact that everyone's kind of coming at me
about it. Yeah, he was like, "No, it's just a silly thing we do, and we don't really like believe it, but like, well, actually, there is some interesting evidence if you read." But I don't. I thought that was a very funny, like, genuine kind of human reaction to like, if you have like that one weird.
Everyone's going to think I actually believe in Bigfoot. No.
I was like, it felt like
Boo Boo the clown.
The reaction to like that one weird thing that you like believe in, or that one weird thing where you're like, I think there's a decent chance, but I won't really talk about it because people will think I'm weird about it.
I feel like everyone's had a moment like that too. So it's just.
I feel like everyone has at least relatable. Like one weird thing where you're at least like at least moderate towards.
It's like, there's not a 0% chance this is a thing, and everyone's like, "Ah, what a loser," and you're like, "No, I've been perceived. Don't look at me."
It's like whenever if I'm listening to a podcast or something, and someone's like, "Do you believe in aliens?" and they're like, "Yeah." But I mean, like, in a, like, oh, there's probably other life somewhere in the universe statistically kind of way, and not in, like, a, like, tinfoil hat Roswell Area 51 kind of way, because they immediately have to be, like, just to clarify.
Yeah, when someone asks me if I believe in ghosts, I'm like, well, I mean, like, I believe in spirits, but not spirits like spooky guys. Like, how do I explain
like little
this
spookum
to
boys.
you? Like little spooky guys, little spooky boys, little spookums running around. But yeah,
it was a weird episode. It was funny, a very timely cameo that they got.
I think I'd like this episode more on a re-listen, but as is, I felt like some of the stuff could have been foreshadowed a lot better, especially when it came to, like, the scientist. The fact that Eugene was the one that wrote the paper, like...
Well, yeah, especially, that was another thing where it's like, wait, was I supposed to know that beforehand? Because
it's like,
Eugene
was this supposed to be, like, a big reveal? Because there wasn't really any foreshadowing.
Because I feel like Eugene said, like, but one of his coworkers also wrote another paper that dismantled some of the facts, and then when the guy shows up, he was like, Eugene, you wrote this paper that took about all these things. And yeah, it was like lots of those things where
it was
like,
strange.
Wait, did I misinterpret, or am I misremembering something before, or was that supposed to be a reveal? Which is not ideally how you want your reveal to go.
Also, I totally forgot what the guy's name was, so when Eugene was like, it's this guy, I was like, oh no.
Well, I was like, clearly it's the only other person whose name has been said in the episode, because there's been 3 people in this.
I was also playing a game. I was listening. But leave me alone.
Look, Victoria, there was 3 characters in this episode up until now, and they named one other person.
And I was also convinced it was going to somehow be someone we already knew.
It did at first, when it started doing the voice.
And also, in my defense, it was just so bizarre that it was that guy that I didn't realize it was actually him.
All I remembered was it was a name that started with an O, and this was another name that started with an O. It's the same guy. When he started saying human voices, because they were like, ow, you're hitting me with rocks, or whatever they did. Beating him with sticks, I don't remember.
It's a stick. Let's beat her with it.
He was like...
I really want to rewatch Cinderella 3, the greatest movie ever written.
He was like, stop attacking me. And it was enough of a generic old man voice in Scooby Doo fashion that I thought that it, in Blackbeard's Treasure-esque fashion, that this was just going to be some random old man who lived in Odyssey, and this was his land, and he just likes to scare people off his property by pretending to be Bigfoot.
But, like, that's so funny, though.
And
imagine
for all I
growing
knew,
up and, like, I aspire to just scare the crap out of people. Also, speaking of me watching a bunch of lawyer stuff, I don't think what this guy did was actually technically completely illegal. Like, he did channel the funds, which is...
Well, yeah, that's the illegal part, Victoria.
That's the illegal part, but also him just, like, if it weren't for that, I don't really think this could count as a crime. Like,
well, no, what would it be?
Harassment. It could either be harassment or battery.
Well, he didn't attack them, but yeah,
you could chasing them. You could make the argument.
You could make a case for harassment, definitely. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't trespassing or anything like that. They made it clear that it was like a misappropriation of funds was the crime at hand.
Yeah. So like before they explained like the whole money skewing thing, and they're like, "You're going to jail," and I was like, "Why is he going to jail? I don't think he actually did a crime.
You're under arrest for impersonating Bigfoot. It's identity theft, Jim. It's not a joke. It affects thousands of families every year."
So I think I'm gonna give it like a 3.
What I was gonna say before was when I thought that it was just some random old man in Odyssey who was scaring people off his property, just like Ned Tatch in / Teach in in Blackbeard's Treasure, then my mind immediately jumped to no bones about it. Is this like Jeb Eckhart? Is this the old man who struck oil, who is now like an impossibly old man, like the chocolate the chocolate grandma from SpongeBob, who's like so old and he has so much money from when he struck oil that all he does with his days is dress up as Bigfoot and run around in the woods to scare people.
I mean,
He has
eccentric
more
people
money than he
do
knows
as
what to do
eccentric people do.
It all lines up.
There's just like a certain level of like
straw hat, far out property in Odyssey, large property in Odyssey that people hike through. Old man, eccentric and crazy, too rich to know what to do with his time. It all lines up.
There's a level of eccentricity where it's just like, you are so fun. You know what I think he should have done with the money? I have a way better idea for how he could have gone about everything and made Bigfoot authentic. He should have
I thought you meant
his...
a way better idea with what Jeb Eckhart should have done with his oil money.
No. I think main New York guy should have changed his name to Bigfoot.
Yes.
And then he would have won.
That also...
And then everyone would say, Bigfoot's not real. And he was like, incorrect, I am Bigfoot.
Also, I like how you're like, that's what he should have done with his misappropriated funds, is change his name, which,
I mean, the funny thing is,
depending on the state,
with that money,
is usually cost from like $25 to $100 in filing
No,
fees.
the thing with like, he could have paid for it himself, and then he wouldn't have gone to jail.
Yes.
And he also could have still won and kept the money.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, my idea is infinitely better than his, and I don't even live in New York with the same level of education as him, so I win. I defeated him easier than Eugene did. I didn't have to write a paper on the subject.
And that's the real victory, is not having to write an academic paper.
I'm gonna be hunted down by him next. I expect some angry face Snapchats coming in soon on my phone, even though I don't own the app. He will find a way with his allocated funds.
Well, fortunately, Victoria, you live in a much colder climate, and if he tries to do what he did in Odyssey, he will probably freeze to death.
I also own a sword. It's not with me, but I do. It's the thought that counts.
Uh-huh.
Let's rate. I'm giving it a 3. It's not like on the level of Christmas Bells where it's just like, it's not a bad episode, but it could be a lot better in a lot of aspects.
Yeah. And in the web doc, Rudy Hare talks about how to roast marshmallows, and then they talk about how to be safe while camping. And the theme of the episode was like how don't let yourself be goaded into like getting back at someone because they're like teasing you a lot. Because that's what
Which I apparently didn't understand, judging by how I was cheering on Buddy. So I'm gonna give it a 3. It could have been written better. In my mind, it's just like this and Christmas Bells are like on two ends of a scale, where it's just like not the best writing, could have been improved in a lot of regards, but this is so much more enjoyable.
This was
like
fun and weird.
This is like fun, weird, and eccentric. It feels very Scooby Doo-y, which I love. Scooby Dooby. And then Christmas Bells is just like...
Scooby Dooey tonight.
Boring.
Dooey tonight.
So, like, this was fun. I had a fun time with it. What about you?
I thought it was fun in, like, a weird way. I think I'll have a different perspective on it on the re-listen, just because of, like, how unexpected the directions of different things were, like you said. I feel like I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 just because of, like, the kind of, like, weird fever dream tone that it has. I'm
also, like, I feel like the weird fever dreamness of this episode was only enhanced by the fact that Armitage was mentioned. Because I was like, I mean, I'm happy. Yeah,
I absolutely forgot to make a note about that.
But, like, why? Like, I understand why. I think it's kind of cool that he was brought up. I want this guy to come back. I understand that he's, like, a big-time guest voice actor, so we'll probably never see him again. But I just want Eugene to have, like, a weird
character to return narratively.
Nemesis
I forgot to point out,
following him.
When you brought up, like, Armitage earlier, I forgot to point out, I'm curious how much Buck knows about, like, Eugene and Katrina with relation to, like, Novacom, traveling around the world and stuff like that.
I'm thinking not anything.
I feel like little to none, which is interesting.
Like, maybe they might have mentioned to him at some point that they traveled to, like, certain places.
Exactly,
but
he doesn't know why. That's what I mean by a little.
Novacom.
I don't think he knows that they were, like, on the run from, like,
I don't think he knows that Eugene lost his memory at one point.
Around the world for years, to avoid being assassinated.
Did Sparky lose a leg? I'm trying to remember. What the frick was that episode?
But, I mean, especially because Eugene had the point where, like, when he was trying to bond with Buck and he mentioned to someone else, like, oh, you know, we have this stuff in common because I was also a foster child. And we're like, have you told Buck about your father and his deal? Does he know that you have a brother that he hasn't met?
Has he even mentioned that, like, he's a foster child?
Well, that's the thing. He mentioned it to someone else with regards to Buck and trying to
relate but he never mentioned it to Buck that we heard of.
And that's what
I'm saying. And Buck doesn't know that he, like, has an uncle. Yeah. He doesn't know that he has a grandpa.
How much does Buck know about Leonard and his deal? How much does he know about Novacom? Here's the thing. I imagine anyone who lives in Odyssey knows about Novacom, even if they're born after, because surely that must just be a thing that people talk about that happened. And I feel like if Buck has done any Googling about Novacom, he must know that Eugene had some level of involvement in it. But I feel like Eugene and Katrina, if they didn't tell him about it, otherwise, if Buck just asked them, they might not want to volunteer any additional information about the amount of stuff they went through, especially because a lot of it was...
a really bad time in their lives.
Extremely traumatic. Katrina's father was murdered.
Eugene's brother, right?
Sorry?
Everett's Eugene's brother, right? That's his name? Everett and Buck must be about the same age, probably, right?
Yeah, as I pointed out before, he's basically he's more like Buck's brother. Like they're like the same age, more or less.
Yeah, I want them to meet. It'll never happen.
It will never happen, but I really want.
But I wanted to. I part of me feels conflicted about saying it will never happen because we have Jeff Lewis, and we got Wellington back, and we got like Tom's sister and stuff, but
we had Monty come back.
But like Monty doesn't feel as big a deal as those other.
Jeff Lewis is kind of the big one of all time. I feel like
Jeff Lewis, Tom's sister.
Okay, I'll give you that.
On like a scale, it's like Tom's sister's the craziest, and then Jeff Lewis, and then Wellington.
Well, it's also like Tom's sister appeared in it, was mentioned in one episode before, and she was in the episode, but as a flashback as a kid. Jeff Lewis is like has an extra point of weirdness where it's like, oh, we actually brought back the same actor, and he's coming back to fulfill like a continuation of his previous role.
And now he's like a minor character.
He's coming back to fulfill a continuation of his previous role, whereas like Tom's sister, it's like it's a different actress, completely different time scale, and the functions of their identities are essentially completely unrelated, right? Of essence, Becky now or back then could just as easily have been a different person, like Tom's cousin or his next door neighbor, or when he was young or something like that. Like, there's not a necessary connection in the same way that Jeff Lewis as Connie's first love to Jeff Lewis coming back and still having that past relationship with Connie and being the same actor and stuff. I feel like there's a stronger like connection in that coming back than there is in Becky, where it's like, hey, you were a character who was mentioned before, and technically you appeared even though it was a different actress because it was a flashback to like 70 years ago and stuff like that. Yeah. The point is,
and Jeff also, his character arc continues when he came back. So
whereas Becky is just like, I exist so that the Riley farm can still be around. Jeff has actually existed for the sake of being a character who is himself.
You win that one. Okay.
We're both right. I'm more right, but we're both right.
Okay.
Predictions. I forgot.
Are we going to start a new recording for that, though?
Yes, I just remembered all of a sudden, that's also a thing we're doing. Okay, stopping this recording now so we know about predictions for album 72. So here we are now talking about album 72 predictions.
Going feral.
If you missed what happened, go back to, if you're just here for the predictions and you don't know what happened about it being the whole album being accidentally posted on the AIOC.
The album was accidentally dropped undropped.
Victoria, we already explained it. Go in the timestamps to the beginning of us talking about Revenge of Bigfoot, because we spent like 5 minutes explaining it. Anyways, back to this. Album 72.
No, that was the beginning of the first episode we were explaining.
Nope. It was the second one. Otherwise, that would have just been the beginning of the episode.
Never mind. You're right. Okay, I want to talk about this album cover. Holy crap.
Well, normally we do that later on. Okay, we can start with the art, and then we'll circle
This is
back.
everything I wanted. I wanted an episode with Eugene and Connie and Buck being a trio, and I really hope this isn't just like one moment. From like the 3-parter.
I hope they spend the whole episode running away from this burning gas station.
I never noticed the fire. I was just too busy staring at Connie and Buck holding hands because she's his aunt. I thought Connie and Eugene were holding hands too because
I just noticed as you said that they're not.
I want the 3 of them. I need this redrawn. I want the 3 of them to be holding hands. Oh, also, I guess Buck is pulling Connie out, actually.
Yeah.
My sweet boy protecting his aunt.
The Long Road Home, we haven't talked about I haven't read the description yet. We haven't talked about the album titles yet. I think this is going to be a very climactic kind of Buck.
This is going to be an album that makes me go crazy.
If we didn't already have Mr. Skint come back, I would think that this is...
Yeah, this is actually, you know what, Devin?
What?
This is my favorite album cover in a very long time. I actually genuinely really like this album cover. I think...
The long end, that's what it was. I was like, it was the long something that wasn't the long game, that was the Skint. No, that was the Skint 3-parter.
Oh yeah, the details on the road and just like the shading and the trees in the background... And just, like, the kind of, like, gritty grime of just, like, the store and all the details.
Which is, I assume, Pete's Gas and Chow.
It does say gas.
It does say gas. Maybe it wraps around.
But that also looks like...
It says Pete's Gas, and then on the other corner it says In Chow.
Does Pete's Gas and Chow actually... Is that actually, like, a gas station?
What, like, in real life?
No, I mean, like, in the series.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't... It's been so long.
That's where
PJ
Jumbo Fork is.
Yeah, I know, but like...
That's where PJ worked and Leonard Meltzner sent the fax from that in Connellsville.
Do you think PJ's gonna be in this episode? The last time we predicted PJ coming back, I think is when we were like shipping him with Jillian, and then she hooked up with Jason.
It was also mentioned, and we talked about it in the review 2 days ago, in The Clown Hero. They talked about how Megan thought she saw the Queen at Pete's Gas and Chow.
But also, like, sometimes the characters look kind of weird on the covers, and I think they actually look a lot more normal than usual. Like, they don't look as characterized.
Yeah.
I really like this cover.
The hugest fan of Gary Locke's, like, caricaturing style, but this is on the normaler side of human art.
This is my favorite cover in a long time. I think it looks really good.
The smoke billow is good as well.
Yeah,
you can't see what the poster
friends,
says.
family, heritage. I can't talk. Buck is gonna become a Christian in this album. I'm putting my money on it now.
The family heritage makes me think that we are finally going to learn more about Buck's family, and the long end left us hanging.
You can talk about his family a one-on-one with Buck, please.
The family heritage, the long end really brought up a lot of like open questions, like we pointed out, where we're like, is Richard Maxwell, was that who it was? We thought that Richard Maxwell was Buck's dad, right?
No, it was like
the brothers.
Richard, like,
we thought that Richard's stepdad was Buck's dad.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Richard's stepdad is Buck's dad?
Is Buck's biological father.
Yeah.
Is what we thought after like the third Blackguard novel.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Because it came out at the same time as the long end.
There's no news about the next like novels, and it's probably because of COVID, but like it's killing me.
Yeah, but the third Blackguard novel, which had all that Richard backstory, came out at the same time as the long end, where we were talking all about like we were learning about Buck's father and how it really felt like they were setting up more mystery to be unraveled that wasn't revealed in there. And we're like, they're definitely building to more future mystery going on about Buck's family. And so the fact that
It probably won't happen, but what if Richard came back?
Well, here's the thing. And it says here, Faith is definitely referencing Olivia, the finale of Olivia's arc.
Oh, true.
And we'll talk about it. There's only 3 like episodes in this album when you lump together
Olivia's
multi-parters.
Is a 2-parter. Bucks is a 3-parter, which I saw when I
which
clicked on the
means
thing.
probably
And
the
then there's
family
one other
heritage
episode.
is referencing Buck's 3-parter.
I'm kind of hoping the one episode that isn't about Olivia and Buck is like Maury, Suzu, Emily, Cooper.
Hopefully. Okay. Are we done talking about the art? Should we incorporate the other stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
I will read the description now. Yes?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
I am waiting.
Like I said, we mentioned it before, I've read the first sentence of this, but I haven't read anything else. Okay. Have you ever considered that Mr. John Avery Whittaker has his own agenda?
Oh, you told me about that before.
Yeah. And that's quotation marks on the beginning and end of that.
This whole time, the real reason he got Wit's End wasn't because of Jenny's wish. It was because of the virus and the mineral. And
yeah, he was playing a Blackbird's game too. He knew all about Professor M and all that thing. He'd been following, was it not Mendel, not Merkel, Professor M the whole time as well, back and forth.
Yeah, when he blew up everything with the Whisper, that was a con. He knew it would all be
okay,
safe.
Anyways, continuing on. Olivia has a new friend in her life. He's smart, interesting, and just so talkative. Will his influence and Olivia's own desire to settle some scores ruin her friendship with Zoe and the gang at Wit's End?
Settle scores with Zoe?
I don't know why. I mean, I assume scores that we have not yet seen.
Oh, okay.
And the gang at Wit's End, will his devious comments convince Olivia to abandon her faith? This is presumably talking about Leonid.
Oh, no, I think it's Maury.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of someone.
Meanwhile, Buck and Jules discover that Buck's father left behind a lot more than could ever have been suspected. I was right. I was so right. 100%. Could the map help him determine what is next for his life? Because he's beginning to wonder if he really wants to be in a family with Eugene and Katrina.
No!
Is that in a negative way or a positive way? Does that mean he's beginning to really want, like he felt so before and now he's having second guesses? Or does that mean like he's wondering if he really wants to stay with them forever because he didn't know that before? I don't know if that's supposed to be a positive or negative connotation. Elsewhere in Odyssey.
I mean, he did almost leave like a couple albums ago. I think he's like, canonically really antsy about the fact that like he's grown so attached to them.
Which is funny because I feel like we don't feel like that at all.
Yeah, no, it's because
we love
been
him.
around
He's
for
our
so
little
long
boy.
and we're so emotionally attached to him.
He's our little meow meow and we don't feel like that at all.
We can all agree, and by we, I don't just mean you and me, I mean the entire Odyssey fan base, that if Buck leaves, we riot.
Yes. Elsewhere in Odyssey, Bridget Perkins learns a good lesson about judging others when she feels that her own life is under the microscope.
Okay, so that's going to be the one-parter.
Yes. So, I was 100% right a minute ago. Buck's father is indeed going to be the thing in Family Heritage, and that's what's going on. It's a mystery about Buck's father and solving the mystery, and it's Richard's stepdad. I was right. And then Bridget is the intermediate episode. So we have 928 to 929, starting off with The Lost One, parts 1 and 2, which is, of course, the end to Olivia's faith arc. That we had from last album and that is currently already bonus released on album 71 on the AIOC. And then episode 930, Judge Me Tender, which is Bridget episode. Awesome. We love Bridget. And then finale, 3-parter, 931 to 933, As Buck Would Have It, parts 1 to 3, with Jules and Connie and Eugene. And there's
Katrina
mystery,
better be in it too.
Family, his father, a map, and mom, girls dancing, crashing on your house because technically I'm an orphan.
I still have that picture that I found that someone made that's like,
and someone's burning down a gas station,
and then it just has like all those things in a circle. And if you ever want to get me the perfect gift, I will send you that photo. If you put it on a shirt, I will wear the heck out of that shirt.
Do you think those t-shirt bots from Twitter listen to YouTube videos and take the things you're describing and put them on a t-shirt as well automatically?
I hope so. I feel like there'd be a lot more t-shirts out there in that case.
I'd wear that on a t-shirt.
I'd wear that on a t-shirt.
All right, it's done.
Heck yeah.
And now they're going to make a t-shirt that's just our face in split screen. So I had glanced at the art and I was like, oh, Buck and Eugene and Katrina are running away from something exciting. And I saw like, oh, there's a Buck 3-parter because his name's in the title. It wasn't until we opened the art and I saw Family Heritage. I was like, that must be Buck. And then we talked. I was like, oh, yeah, Buck's father. That was the thing that we thought was going to come back. And then I read it and it was actually confirmed in there. I'm like, I'm so excited for this now. Oh, my goodness. This is going to be a really good album, Victoria, between finishing Olivia's thing.
This is going to be a fantastic album.
I really hope they nail
my
the
only
landing
worry is that, like, my expectations are too high for this album.
I'm literally, as the sentence was coming out of my mouth, they did such a good job on Olivia's arc so far.
The last album was just so good. My expectations are so high. I feel like
so
it's unfair.
high. I really hope they stick the landing with it. And then Buck's stuff, I hope, is super fantastic as well. I should probably re-listen to the long end beforehand.
I should too.
I just remember his dad's name was like Cash Money.
Just Buck's dad was married by Stan and that gold prospector statue in Gravity Falls in Las Vegas.
And then we realized like, oh, he named you Buck because they liked money. I was like, oh.
It's so mean still. I'm still not over that.
Which was a clever reference to the fact that like basically all the new characters introduced in the Green Ring Conspiracy had money related names.
Mm-hmm. But oh man, I know one thing I've talked about in the past a lot with Buck and like characters I want him to interact with more. The main character I usually always said was Connie. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just like, it's probably only just going to be one scene. And that's the thing that gets me. Because, like, Connie wasn't even mentioned in the album description. Not that she had to be, but,
yeah,
like...
I mean, neither was... Well, I guess Eugene was, because they said Eugene and Katrina's family.
Yeah. But, like, I want some Connie-Buck bonding. I also... Another thing I've said a million times, I want Jules and Eugene bonding. I still want an episode where they swap kids... And then they do like a adventure or something like that.
Yes, that's what we want. Okay, I'm very excited for this album. I believe it starts properly coming on the AIOC December 4th, which is...
I think that's closer than I thought.
That's like 2 weeks from now.
I think we're both in agreement that like Olivia's gonna stay a Christian.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think they would have, especially after the bonus track that they gave, I don't think they would do this whole thing and be like... And
also just everything with Olivia in general also, like, it doesn't seem like she's happy at all in any way.
It would be wild if they ended it and they were like, wah, wah.
We decided no. What else? There's no bonus tracks
if it's true that they put that 2-parter in the album because parents were upset that they had to wait for the end of the arc.
It's like, if you think you're upset now, just watch. And then they drop the 2-parter to make them even more
parents
upset.
Would burn the building to the ground if it ended like that.
That'd be so funny. He was like, you think you're mad right now. Let's make you more mad.
Okay, we need to end this so that I need to eat. You have to watch a movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch a movie.
Next time we are talking about Akra.
What? Oh, I had no idea what you were trying to say there. It's a 2-parter.
Yes.
I don't remember what it's called.
It is called
Voice of Freedom.
Yes.
Part 1 and 2.
So we'll be doing that next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blacker. And next album, we're getting confirmation. We're getting confirmed Buck Richard step-siblings is what you were going to say?
Yes. Also Rachel. Don't forget Rachel.
Is it half-siblings or step-siblings?
Half siblings.
I guess half because Buck came second.
Wait, no, not even that. That guy never married Richard's mom.
That's true. And he also, it's not half because he wasn't biologically Richard's dad. So it is step.
Yeah.
It's just the other way around. Would it even be
step?
It's like backwards step.
I don't think that's a thing.
Backwards step, ex-boyfriend, dad, mom's boyfriend.
Man, that's my. Will you backward step ex-boyfriend, dad, mom's boyfriend, take Carol to be your lawfully wedded something or other?
Your step brother.
Okay, that's it. We need to end now.
That's the end. Goodbye.
Goodbye.